Hello everyone, I'm Ash, and welcome to My Dinner with Austin, which is a funny Simpsons game, or so I thought, but then I read the disclaimer. So, we're gonna have fun, I think. Uh-oh. Press start. The beautiful town of Springfield. The life of an indie developer is tough. It's not easy. You work hard making games and nobody buys them. You take up other lines of work to try and make a living. I became a voice actor and people don't hire you. Preacher to the choir, buddy. So just spend your days doing the errands of your trade. I've been trapped by an odd series of circumstances into agreeing to have dinner with a man I've been avoiding for years. His name was Andre Gregory. At one time, he had been a very close friend of mine, as well as my most valued colleague in game development. In fact, he was the man who had first discovered me and put in a good word to some publisher friend of his. That act of generosity later led to my first ever release. When I had known Andre, he was at the height of his career working for one of the largest developers in America. But then something happened to Andre. He dropped out of the games industry. He sort of disappeared. While his family seemed to only know that he'd been traveling in some place like Tibet, or you would hear at parties that he'd talk to trees or something like that. Obviously something terrible had happened to Andre, like he'd wandered lost into a decrepit alleyway, hanging around tin bins, with lit fires in them in the company of burnt-out vendors, and the homeless probably just eating old shoes just to survive. The whole idea of meeting him made me nervous. I had problems on my own. I mean, I couldn't help Andre. Was I supposed to be a doctor or what?
It's been years. I hope the guild truffle isn't too modish for you. Well, you look terrific.
Well, I feel terrible. So we talked for a while, about my various indie game dev projects, about the successes and those that were, well, less than a success. We talked about how my contributions to various games as a voice actor, and about my girlfriend Debbie, about his wife Chiquita, and his 2 children, Nicholas and Marina. Finally, I got around to asking him what he'd been up to the last few years. Well, I'd been working on the latest installment of World of Crustcraft. I see that little glitch square in the corner. Oh no. A few years ago. The office culture had been going downhill at Wizard Entertainment for some time now, and had begun leaving a sour taste in my mouth. Why did I say that? To say the least. Oh. Bon mot. I think that means joke? Trenchant insight. I don't know what trenchant means, but, insight. Heard about all the frat boy culture and all the sexual harassment on Rock Bottom. Doesn't surprise me that many of the female characters in those games are showing a lot of skin. Okay.
Nor me. I'll say that not all avatars in Walk ended up being overly sexualized. After all, about 35% of the player base is female. Upsetting that a portion of the pie would hurt the hip pocket of the higher-ups at Wizard, Wally. That's beside the point. The whole place had turned to a fraternity where sexual harassment toward the female staff was commonplace. What's just happening, Wally? It was actively promoted there.
Some of the women were being harassed on a daily basis. There was unequal pay, declined promotions on the basis that they may get pregnant. Even retaliation for anyone that dared to do something about it and make a positive change. Oh dear.
Happens to men in the industry, too. Rock Bottom reported that there was this game going around the Wizard offices. Men would try and grope others' genitals.
Heard about that, yes.
Never saw it personally.
But that's not the end of it, not by a long shot. One of the women committed suicide while on a company trip with the male supervisor, Wally. There were nude photos of her circulating during a company holiday, and she just broke. Reports started surfacing that many of the higher-ups knew about the accusations and did nothing about them. We staged a walkout in protest with a clear demand. Fire the CEO of Wizard, Blobby Kotick. All that Wizard could muster was to try and sell the matter with an $18 million payout. Slap in the face while the company is worth, what, $50 billion? $72 billion! That suicide was the end of it for me. The match in the powder barrel. That poor woman. I had to get out of there. So I resigned from Wizard and have stayed away from game development ever since. We're more likely to see Blobby buy up news outlets to control the public narrative than see him work on fixing the issues. You know, Wally, Blobby is still the CEO. Nothing has changed still. So in the end, I left the country, went to India, and spent some time moving my neck around like a well-cooked piece of asparagus. Then head to Australia for some R&R, saw a few bootings. Hey, you know, the water in the toilets there spins the other way? Read about the Coriolis effect in the Reading Digest, yes? Of course, eventually it got to the point where I need to express myself once more, and so I decided to come back home. The creative spirit endures. It's relentless at times, so now I've been asking myself what form my desire to create will take. I'd love to return to making something, it's just something I'm just intrinsically drawn to. Preach it to the choir again. But I can't bring myself to go back to AAA games development. Besides, corporate toxicity aside, the fact is that making a AAA game has become so expensive, it's rarely feasible to take creative risks. From a business standpoint, anyway. And true artistic expression stagnates when the primary focus is to make a product that's going to fly off the shelves. Just look at the Hollywood and two industries mirror each other. Precisely. The AAA industry can no longer afford to take risks and push the medium in leaps and bounds like it used to. Perhaps every so often, lightning in a bottle strikes, but it's the indie scene that isn't shackled by shareholder interest. It's free to truly push the medium. It's a matter of scale. In the 80s and 90s and even in the 2000s, it was cheaper to make commercial games. It took way less time to complete them. You could make a half-baked platformer, shamelessly clone the latest commercial hit, slap on some Krusty Burger and sponsored art, assets, and get the restaurant chain to pay for much of the dev costs in return for reducing the game down to a virtual advertisement. Or just skin a rushed game to suit the latest Rainer Wolfcastle action flick, force the game out to a crunched schedule to coincide with the film's release, and you'd still see a profit in the end. Have you ever played that game where a kid versus some space mutants? It's as bad as Kevin Costner's Waterworld. Nowadays, though, it's a considerable risk to recreate a restaurant, film, or TV tie-in and remain competitive in the market. Still happens here and there, but you don't see them as often. Games become more and more generic when they appeal to the lowest common denominator. That's more or less the end result when the widest possible net needs to be cast in order to make significant profit at these large scales of development. Sure, and many of the devs are still forced to crunch in order to meet deadlines despite huge dev timelines, thanks to lousy management. There will always be exceptions, of course, but on the whole, this is the current situation. I was thinking about the indie games you made in the past, Wally. Relatively small development times, possible to complete, with a small team or even just one person. Most importantly, you get to decide what you make without having to consider what the market wants from you. What a committee of higher-up deems to be the most lucrative course of action, for that matter. Andre, I've got to say, I'm making indie games, yes, but they're retro games. Literally retro. Not retro style, but Game Boy games that run on Game Boys. It's an avenue of games development that is pretty up there in terms of niche markets. Sometimes I feel like my games have no relevance. Here's the thing, Wally. It'll be relevant to someone out there, if you're doing your best to express yourself truthfully. Wally, I don't want to make products anymore. I want to make games that are designed by committee. I want to make games that are an expression of me. Like what you've been doing. But Andre, there's rarely any money in it. I had to take up voice acting to make ends meet. You go through cycles of depression and anxiety back to elation when you finish something. The cycle just repeats, it doesn't matter what artistic medium you choose as well. In fact, I was just thinking of throwing in the trowel. Get a 40-hour a week job, get some financial security, and just move on. No, Wally, keep at it. It's in that space where true artistic vitality lives. Screw the money. I mean, of course you have to do what you can to pay the bills, but outside the needs of survival and whatever you can muster, to live comfortably, untethered, self-expression and self-exploration is the reward in itself. Not the money, not the social media likes or the follows, or the sales numbers, or whatever, whether you read about your work on betterthantv.com. Yes, there's the inevitable roller coaster with its ups and downs, but would you really have it any other way? And you're right, it doesn't matter if you're a painter or a writer, a coder, a filmmaker, or a games designer. Even if you're just putting a barbecue pit together. We artists can only just continue creating, honing our craft. Hope that our work connects with someone and enriches their lives in some way.
So what are you proposing here, Andre?
Let's go into partnership, Wally. Let's make a game together. Speak from our hearts and take a risk or two and see where the wind takes us.
What do you say?
Oh no. Yeah! Alright, Andre! Why not? Let's do it! Fantastic! Hey, Andre. Yes, Wally?
I'm waiting for a long time for this, waiter.
Oh yeah.
Wanna get a burger?
Certainly the gilded truffle sucks anyway. Don't know what I was thinking. Ah. Crusty burger. Oh no. It's scuffed. Well, at least the message was good. Do what you want. Screw the money. I guess it couldn't go wrong in some scenarios, but I mean, fulfillment and all that. I wish I could see the credits though. And I want to know who made this stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, that was my dinner with Andre. It was a very interesting, well, it's more of a visual novel, if anything. And a really good one at that. And so, very good. So, goodbye everyone. Hope you have a nice day.